The 10 habits of highly successful and most valued dentists. Now, before you join this episode, I want to apologize profusely. I am so sorry for the poor audio quality in the first 10 to 11 minutes of this podcast. So if you, like me, hate cringeworthy, poor quality, then you might want to skip to 11 minutes. You'll miss the first habit if you like. But if you can bear it, or if you've got good quality headphones, then try your best. This is the problem with remote podcasting, different quality headphones, internet issues. So again, really sorry for the poor audio quality of the first 10 minutes. But I hope you still gain value from this fantastic episode. So many gems from Rajv Ruwala. Anyway, thanks so much for listening.
And this is probably more important. It's not okay for you to develop as a dentist, not be able to communicate with that patient, spend a lot of money on your own investment, and then they don't take the treatment and you don't get rewarded for it. I think people miss that one out. So that's not okay for us either.
This episode is about the 10 habits of highly successful and most valued dentists with Dr. Rajv Ruwala. Hey guys, and welcome to episode 42 of the Protrusive Dental Podcast. I bet you guys are sick of my monologues, right? So the whole of September, I did Splintember, and I managed to get about 4 episodes in there. I still owe you 1 episode, but I thought now that it's October, I'd get back into the flow of the usual style of episodes because I think you guys are probably sick of hearing my voice, so let's mix it up. I guess I owe you 1 episode about finishing off, final words about anterior splints, comparing one to another. So I'll do that next month in November if you don't mind. So for this episode, I'm joined by Dr. Rajv Ruwala, who had such a massive impact on my career. It's probably the reason why I'm a GDP as it stands. Now, Rajv is someone who's such an agreeable dentist to me. Every time he posts something on social media, on one of the dental groups, I'm like, yes, I completely agree with him. And he's full of so much wisdom. He's great at really all the aspects of dentistry. He's someone you really hate because they're just good at everything. But he made this post on one of the dental groups, which is called the 10 habits of the most successful dentists and most valued dentists. And I just love that list. And I thought it deserved its own episode, which is what this is. So before we dive in and join Dr. Rajv Ruwala to reveal those 10 habits, I want to share with you the Protrusive Dental Pearl. And the pearl for this episode, it stems from my history with Rajv. Basically, I was introduced to Rajv through this mentorship program with Rina Wadia a few years ago. And as part of it, I went to shadow Rajv Ruwala. And it's from that very powerful experience of shadowing another dentist like Rajv, which had such a huge impact on my career. So my pearl for you is, I'm hoping the COVID situation is going to reduce at any point, and then you'll be able to do the following. I want you to email, call, or Facebook message, or tweet, or whatever, a local dentist whom you really respect, and just say, hey, can I come and shadow you, even if it's just for half a day? You will learn so much, I guarantee it. So that's my pearl for you. Make it happen. Are you going to action on this or not? It's really up to you, but I think you have so much to gain to do it. So that's my pearl. Shadow someone. You'll learn a lot. So let's join Rajv for the episode. I hope you like it, and I'll join you in the outro. So we got Rajv Ruwala on the podcast today, someone who I've admired for a long time. I shadowed you maybe around, 5, 6 years ago, something like that, something crazy like that.
Something like that. With Sophia, right?
It was. Oh gosh, it was a couple of years out of dental school, or maybe the first year. It was very early on, and honestly, I think if I didn't have that experience with you on that day, I might not be a GDP today. That's the level of impact you had on me, and I sort of talked about your philosophies and the protocols and stuff in one of the earlier episodes, which was like my first interference cast. But honestly, you had a massive impact on my career trajectory. So like the little things that you have sometimes that sort of change the course of your career, and the reason, because most people say, okay, why was it so impactful for me? Is because I saw a GDP working in a busy environment. I don't know if you're fully private, what you're doing. It seemed like it was mixed, perhaps.
Yeah, it's definitely mixed. I still do my NHS. Granted, it's not a huge amount, but I still like doing NHS work, and most of my patients come and see me on the NHS.
Which is what I saw, and I thought, wow, you're making this work. Yeah, you're making it work, and it seemed just amazing. The systems that you had, the type of work you were doing, it was truly inspiring. And then, of course, on Facebook the other day, you posted the 10 habits of highly successful and most valued dentists, and I absolutely loved it. But to be fair with you, you're someone who on Facebook every time you post something, I'm like, yeah, I agree. I've never like once disagreed with you. Can you believe it? But it doesn't mean that you're perfect or that me and you are always right. It just means that what it means is that our values must align in some dimension. The way we see the world, me and you, align to some degree. Because I always find myself agreeing with you. And I take a lot of takeaway points from your post. So this mammoth post that you did, this 10 points, is just sensational, and I want everyone to know about it. So if it's okay with you, Rajiv, the way we're gonna do it is I'm gonna say your 10 points one by one, and then tell you to sort of home in on one or 2 points about that point to get it from your perspective. What were you thinking about that point, and to make points more tangible? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Super. So the first one is that, so one of the habits of a highly successful and most valued dentist is that they can listen to the patient's story and find a treatment to become a solution for the patient. So they can listen to a patient's story and find a treatment to become a solution for the patient. So what I want to ask you to gain more value from exactly what you wrote there is sometimes patients are not open. They're like a closed book. And to find their sort of hidden story or their main driver or their goal, you have to do a bit of work to get to that. And a lot of dentists will completely go throughout their whole career without realizing that and actually homing in on that. And it's probably something I learned from you a while ago, actually. So my question to you, Rajiv, is based on that first point is, any tips in how to encourage patients to tell their story or their goal? And because, like I said, they don't often offer that up front.
Yeah, no, in fact, I would say that virtually all patients are like that, especially new ones, 100%. It's very rare that a patient will come in and actually say their story. So it's like any clinical skill, it can be improved and worked on. And I think talking to patients is a skill. So there are lots of tips. I think the first one is that you've got to be open to it. I know it sounds really stupid, but a curious mind always goes a long way. So I think actually wanting to understand a patient's motivator is probably the first thing. So it's very difficult to do that if you actually can't be bothered. If you just want to get the patient, sit down and do the work and not listen to them, it's going to be impossible to do that. So that's the first thing. You actually have to want to know what the patient is going through. The second tip I probably have is that if you put yourself in the patient's shoes, it's very easy to understand their issues. So if somebody's got a broken premolar, upper premolar, any premolar, it doesn't really matter which one, you can imagine that if you broke your own premolar, what would the emotions you'd be going through? The first thing was when it cracks, the first thing you have to be a bit shocked. And then the second thing you probably do is run to the bathroom or in a closest mirror and look at it.
True.
And then the third thing.
Or nowadays, get your phone out and take a selfie.
Yeah, or the phone. Yeah, exactly. Well, the next thing you do, is when you start trying to use that tooth, you'd realise how difficult it actually is. You realise there's a sharp bit that's cutting on your tongue, or there's food getting wedged in there that actually is painful because of the physical pressure of it. And you'll very quickly realise you can imagine you wouldn't want to eat crusty breads or fibrous meat or anything sticky. In fact, you probably wouldn't want to eat anything on that side at all. You'd be eating with the other side. And trying to eat with the other side is actually incredibly difficult. I give every dentist a challenge to have their dinner tonight and try and eat with one side of your mouth and not touch the other side. It's pretty much impossible. Mm-hmm. So these are the things that people are going through in their everyday lives if they break a tooth, or I'm just using that as an example.
Yeah.
And then if that's the case, that it is affecting their lives in some way, because if you don't want to eat some foods, you're avoiding your favorite foods. And so if you're avoiding your favorite foods, usually somebody will notice. Usually it's mum or partner or kids. If you've got a sharp bit in your tongue that's affecting the way you're speaking, everyone is definitely going to notice. If it's a premolar, there's a good chance somebody's going to be able to see that. Mm-hmm. And so the patient would be hiding their face, or they'd be embarrassed about going for their Zoom meeting on the Protrusive Dental podcast. for example, right? And so all these things, a simple broken tooth is affecting their lives on a big, big scale. And the best dentists are able to find that out.
So what you're saying, Rajiv, is basically to be open to the fact that actually, despite what they're saying, that I've got a broken tooth, that you got to be open to the real story and what they're actually going through, and then to have empathy to be able to relate to the patient and actually figure out that actually because the story is actually not a broken tooth. The story is the chewing difficulty, the sharpness, the embarrassment. That's the story.
Of course. And if you try and fix somebody's story and try and fix the problem, how it affects them, that solution is worth thousands of £1,000s. Giving them a mechanical solution to fix a hole is worth very, very little. And
awesome.
I think dentists don't want to sell. They want to be valued by their patients. And if you can understand their story and relate their treatment to their story, patients immediately value what you have to say. And if they value what they have to say, it so happens that they tend to spend more money.
It's exactly what you said there. It's relating their problem as their own story back to them rather than a mechanical solution for a mechanical problem. Really 100%. Awesome. Very happy with that. Hi guys, it's Jazz here. I'm just going to butt in this episode just inform you about my latest project. It is a Splint course. So check out splintcourse.com to pre-register your interest. And I just want to tell you about it because in February, I gave my first hands-on in-person live event for Splint and I had great feedback and I'm still in touch with the delegates in a WhatsApp group. But the most common feedback I get is that I wish I could revisit that content. I wish I could revisit that day to sort of look at it again, because every time you get a Splint case, there are nuances and you sort of want to revisit some of the content. So I took that on board and initially I had planned 6 more dates throughout 2020 for the Splint course, but obviously that got cancelled because of COVID, because we wanted to keep it hands-on. But now I've turned the course completely online, or I'm in the finalizing processes of getting it online. And if you're interested in a very, very comprehensive Splint course going through all the different types of splints from diagnosis to prescription to follow-up and also the lab stages, the theory, the evidence, patient communication skills, how to charge appropriately, all that sort of stuff, and that's your thing and you want to develop in that area, then pre-register your interest on www.splintcourse.com and I hope you'll join me. For those who have seen the Resin Bond and Bridge course online, it'll be a bit like that, how it's delivered, so I hope it'll bring you really good value. So if you're interested in that, please register your interest and hopefully by December or the new year, I'll have this very bespoke course out ready for you. Thanks so much. Righto, so we're going to pick up where we left off. So Rajiv, point number 2. So the point number 2 that you had in your top 10 list was they are proactive in recommending treatment, not reactive. And I like this one. I want you to please, if you can, give me a tangible example of where a dentist commonly could be reactive, where perhaps they should be proactive. And then following on from that, I'm going to give you a scenario that I've come across and how you'd handle that. So give me a tangible scenario where we should be more proactive, but for whatever reason we are reactive.
Well, I think this is more because I find it's a problem with young dentists especially. So typically what will happen with young dentists is they've been ingrained with this philosophy of minimally invasive dentistry. And they confuse minimally invasive dentistry for not doing any dentistry. I mean, it's very rare that you get a experienced clinician that presents a case where they've done nothing. It just doesn't happen because, I mean, even the most experienced practitioners will intervene more often. And I think as you get older and more experienced, you realize you have to intervene more often. I think a good example of that is something like cracked cusps, large amalgam restorations that are showing teeth with, that teeth are very heavily in function, wear on canine edges, which is one of the easiest things to be proactive about because you slap some composite on in a very nice way, of course, but you don't have to even take a drill out to do any of this work. But pretty much, I think as you get older, you start wanting to step in before things go wrong. And I think the interesting thing is I'm a VT trainer, and quite frequently they say, "Oh, but I'm being minimally invasive," and my answer to that is, well, what's more minimally invasive? You step in and do a little onlay now, or you have to step in 2 years down the line where you have to do a root canal treatment and a full coverage crown. So yes, you have to do a little bit more work now to get a longer term result. And I think the best dentists, and again, I think it comes with the experience, step in way before patients shows any problems.
Yeah, and a great example there of cracked cuss syndrome. So the scenario I want to give you, just get your opinion on based on that exact point of being proactive, is what happens where if you have a predicament whereby a dentist takes over a list, and the previous dentist was a very reactive dentist whereby you got lots of molars with an intact buccal wall, an MOD amalgam, and a palatal GIC. And this is like a recurring theme in a lot of patients. How would you tactfully approach that scenario? Because now the patients become a reflection of the dentist. And now if you come along and start, suggesting quite appropriately cuspal coverage restorations, and the patients are used to being patched up, how can we handle that scenario? Very difficult scenario.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously difficult, that scenario, but I think usually it's a younger dentist taking over an older dentist list. And I think it's often important to explain to the patients exactly the difference in philosophy. So you can say, look, in fact, to be fair, when I bought my practice, I had exactly that scenario. Luckily, I think the patients kind of wanted something to change, so it was okay for me. But I think the key words I tend to use is, look, yes, we could absolutely leave it, and we can deal with it when there are problems. But the way I see it is that I'd rather step in now where it's a smaller thing to deal with, rather than down the line where if it does break, we might end up losing the tooth and it's going to cost you more money. Again, it's a conversation. So yes, you can absolutely say, you can essentially, I would tell them to change the philosophy and explain the philosophy to us. And then we can goes from there, basically. That's
perfect. It's just being upfront with the patient about a difference in philosophy between the previous dentist and you, and justifying why that's the case. And I think you did it beautifully there in terms of explaining in the patient's own terms the benefit the patient can derive from a more proactive approach. So that's awesome. So number 3, because we got a lot to cover in this 10 list. So number 3 in habits of a highly successful dentist was that they don't get validation from how much patients pay them, but they get validation from how the patient values what they have to say. So if the patient values what you have to say, they naturally accept the treatment. So it's all about not how much money they pay, but how much they value what you have to say, which is great. But let's talk about the patients that just innately do not value dentistry, right? How do you handle that, Rajiv? Because do you try and do everything within your power to change a patient's values, or do you move on from that patient and actually just accept the fact that you will never be able to change the values? So I'm just interested to know that there are lots of patients who don't value dentistry, and when you tell them a crown costs anywhere from £800 plus, they get shocked. Their anchors are very different. And they don't value dentistry like they do other parts of, let's say, whatever they value, a holiday or a kitchen or whatever. So how do you handle that?
Well, I think this comes very much down to the first point where I said, if you can explain something on terms of explain your treatment in terms of how it will affect their life and their and the problems they're going through as opposed to their clinical symptoms, I think that's probably the first step in getting them to value it. You've also got to remember that most patients have taken time out of their schedule to remember to go to the dentist, put it in their diary, phone up the dentist, go through your reception team, get the appointment, put it in their diary and correlate it with their diary. and come and sit in your chair. I think they've got to value something to have to do all that. They've not done that to come and sit in your chair and go, yeah, I'm sitting here because I've been forced to. No one's forced them to do that. Maybe their wife on occasion, but no one has really forced them to do that. So there is already the fact that they're in your dental chair. They already value it to an extent. Again, I think people get shocked when they don't when somebody prescribes some treatment without understanding where they're coming from first. But if you, again, I think this all comes down to the first point. If you understand their story and explain the treatment in relation to their story, that solution becomes more valuable in the first place. It's very difficult to
it's about
say,
framing it in their own sort of way.
Teeth. Yeah. Because if a patient comes in and says, I got a broken tooth, it's painful, and then the dentist goes, okay, well, let's have a look, has a quick peek, takes an x-ray, and he goes, yes, you're right, you got a broken tooth. By the way, that's £1,000. Even hearing that from me, even if you are a dentist, sounds, okay, yeah, that's quite a lot of money. And well, it's quite obviously they're shocked. Whereas, as I said, if I'm fixing a solution, so if I'm saying to somebody, look, doing all this treatment is going to be able to, you can smile again, you won't have to have problems, you can go out with your friends without having to worry about what you're eating, all of a sudden, a patient will pay thousands of pounds for that solution, even though the clinical treatment is exactly the same. So I think that's the best thing. I mean, there are many ways you can explain value to your patient, but for me, that's the key way. But experienced dentists and the best dentists are able to have that conversation in their own way. However they do it, it doesn't really matter, but they're able to get their patients to value the dentistry.
I mean, just a side topic. I like what you said there. This is a side question now based on that is, do you think there is a role for scripts? Now, in sales, a lot of sales sort of companies, they actually advocate the reception team and dare I say, even some clinicians to have some scripts. I'm not a massive fan of that. However, I am a fan of having a structure to what you're going to say to best present something to a patient rather than being haphazard. What do you think about that?
That's exactly what I was about to say. Scripts don't work. In my opinion, they don't work at all. Sometimes some stock phrases work because they can have impact. But scripts tend not to work because, again, if you're trying to understand a patient's story, every story is different. The overriding story might be the same, but the nuances are different. And so you still have to listen to them. A structure is more important than a script. And for me, the structure is more about understanding that the first part of my structure is letting them talk and not interrupting them at all, letting them talk and asking them questions. Then the next thing I kind of want to know, the next part of my structure, is to try and understand when these things have happened, how does that make them feel? Were they shocked? Were they scared? Were they upset? Were they mortified about it?
Rajiv, do you straight up ask them, how did that make you feel? Like when you broke your tooth, how did you make that feel? I think it's important to get that emotion from them, but sometimes when you get that big butch guy, there's got to be a tactful way to extrapolate their feelings without straight up asking them how that made them feel. Do you know what I mean?
So there's two ways of doing it. That's one of them. I can't do that. It sounds it sounds quite aggressive if I say that. I tend to say more along the lines, and you can use your experience as a dentist here. If my patients, previous patients have told me this, they tend to be quite upset, and I can imagine it being quite upsetting. And the patient will almost certainly nod and go, yeah, it was upsetting. And sometimes they go, no, it wasn't upsetting. It was more this. And sometimes, but you can usually pitch that emotion to them directly. And that's
what I was looking for. I'm glad you
disagree.
said that. Yeah. So I love that, to pitch that emotion and then get validation if they agree from that, rather than where I've had, I've been taught before on some courses where like ask them, if you have this, how would it make you feel? Or, just that sort of question, it just doesn't belong. It doesn't seem right. So I like the way that you said it. Suggest it to them and see if they agree.
Yeah, some people can get away with it, but I can't. And I don't think many dentists can.
It depends on your patient as well. It depends on your, if you get little old ladies, very sweet, then yeah, fine, more in tune with their feelings. But if you get a bloke in their 40s, 50s, they're not going to buy it, not usually.
Yeah, but I mean, and you have to pitch correctly. If you pitch too strong an emotion, you tank. You have to pitch, if anything, slightly lower than what you think. So it's very easy to pitch upset as opposed to devastated. You can only use devastated when they've broken their tooth the day before their wedding. Then you'd be devastated, right? If you got a little chip on the upper 8, the patient wouldn't be devastated. They'd be maybe upset, maybe it might be irritating for them, but they would be. You have to pitch slightly lower than you think, and then usually the patient will upgrade that feeling. So that's the second part. But again, these are all little structural differences.
That's a gem. Thank you so much. That's an absolute gem. Brilliant. So number 4, successful dentists and those who are most valued, they work with their nurses to make sure everything is ready and set up before the patient enters the room. So, I mean, the value of a great nurse is monumental. So what I want to know from you is, are you a checklist kind of guy? Are you, I don't know, maybe I get a feeling that Rajv is a checklist manifesto kind of guy, but tell me, are you not? And how can you get your
actually
nurses
not
on board?
at all.
Are you not? Okay, fair enough, cool. So tell me, how do you get the systems in place?
You know what, I think it was driven out of patient care. And I know that sounds really silly. So it was driven out of patient care, and sometimes that sounds not silly, that's not the right word. Contrived, but it's not at all. And also slightly out of selfishness. Essentially, I realized I was running occasionally quite late with some certain treatments where, especially if I had a junior nurse, and I realized it wasn't their fault that I started doing some work and then I turn around and ask for a particular material or a particular instrument. I realized that it wasn't in the room at the time, and then they had to run out of the room, get it, and come back. And then you're sat there for 30 seconds twiddling your thumbs, and it feels like 5 minutes.
Oh my God, it feels like forever.
And the patient is looking up at you going, is something wrong? And you're going, no, there's nothing wrong. We just got that. And it's not as if that patient has turned up to your surgery and needs random care. You've prescribed this care. You should know what you're doing. So I worked out that, again, I did this with all the dentists in the practice, and we sat down and, for example, we looked at crown preps and went, right, if we're going to do a crown prep, what are what's 90% of the materials we need, if not 99% of the materials need? And we pretty much all agree, you're going to need some form of burr, you're going to need a fast hand piece, you're going to need some sort of impression material or scanner, you're going to need a retraction cord, you're going to need, trays, for example. So if we know we're going to need those things, why can't we get that already good to go? And the way you frame this to your nurse is you say, look, that awkwardness that we have when we haven't got something and I'm looking at you and you're looking at me, I don't want that anymore, and I don't think you want that anymore, and let's just be prepared, let's be organized, because we know what we're going to do. I'm going to spend 15 minutes before the beginning of the day or the beginning just before lunch, and we'll sit there looking at our treatments and we'll get everything ready. And that way we don't run late. The patient gets proper care, and then there's none of this awkward conversation between us. And I believe that the best quality care is only delivered when you've got your full concentration on the patient. If you're looking up at your nurse wondering what the hell's going on, your mind is somewhere else. You're not delivering proper dentistry. And you can only learn in a situation where you're concentrating. If you're doing the other thing, you're not learning, you're coping.
Absolutely. And I think what I've learned is that nurses
of coping.
What I was going to say, what I've learned is that nurses, what they value the most is consistency. So if you keep changing your protocols
100%.
without communicating with them first, then that's going to be stressful for the nurse, because they want to do a good job for you, right? And they want to make sure that everything goes smoothly, that they can get their lunch and they can go home on time and they can enjoy the patient care without those blips, without having to run down the stairs to get something. But also, the thing they found the most stressful is that when they change dentists or they have to work with a different dentist, a lot of the times that's when they experience the most stress, because then they have to learn a new routine and then develop the consistency in that. But then the dentist who keeps changing their mind and doesn't have a set system is probably the most stressful dentist to work for. So if you're a dentist out there listening to this and don't have a system in place that can promote consistency, then now's the time to speak with your nurse and develop that, I think.
It's also, in terms of learning, it's good to know what you're doing now, and you can always upgrade one thing or the other. So you can always
Someone's here, Rajv. Amazon. You got Amazon at the door. You got Amazon at the door.
Yeah, probably. You could. It's very easy to have a list of what you're doing now and then just upgrade one feature of it. Whereas if you're trying to change 5 things at once, people tend not to. Tends not to work so well.
That's a good tip.
You have a list
changes.
of what I'm going to do, the buckle preparation. Yeah, incremental changes works way better than wholesale changes in one go. I've seen so many people on courses who learn one thing and then they try to change everything and it never works. You just got to change one thing at a time.
Yeah, in the real world, it has to be one thing at a time. Absolutely. So number 5 is they do not moan about their working environment or the system or their staff. They help and find solutions to problems and improve the situation. So what I took away from this is that this reminded me of the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where Stephen Covey talks about the circle of concern and the circle of influence. And for those not familiar with this, there's things that concern us, right? Like the CDO concerns us because what she has to say ultimately has some impact on us. The state of COVID-19 at the moment and PPE concerns us, okay? But you decide whether that's going to let it, dictate your entire mood, entire system, everything, or can you work around it? You have to accept that what's happened. You can't change that. But what you can change, you have to adapt and do the best you can, that scenario. So tell me about not blaming your environment. I mean, when I see your posts about the NHS, you make it work because you have got these very strong opinions about how it should be run more efficiently in a better way, and I completely respect that. But a lot of people just go to the default. The easy option is to moan about it. The harder option is to accept it and change yourself so that you can make it work.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, I think if you look around the world at any system, the people who are in that system are going to moan about it. I mean, there's no such thing as a perfect system. It just, even privately, there's no such, even a private system isn't perfect. So you have to make the system work for you. I think there's great value in looking at how things work and making it work for you, rather than hoping that somebody else comes and tells you how to fix it and makes it work for you. No one helps you build it. Once you've built it, everyone wants to do that and join you. But I mean, for example, the NHS obviously has many flaws in dentistry and medicine generally. But if you can make it work, because so many people are finding it difficult to do that, that's an asset. And so, if you have a conversation about how we make it work, that's, I think, a 3-hour dental podcast. So I don't really want to go down that way. But
I'll just say it now, Rajv, because you're right, because we can't go into that too much. But I told you at the beginning when we had a little chat that a lot of people have messaged me about making that transition from DF to their first associate position, and they don't have the benefit of having a mentor like you, who's obviously, I'm sure you pass this information on to your DF1s, right?
Well,
do you do any courses or anything like that to learn this sort of stuff? Because I do think what you have is very valuable.
Yeah, I personally don't, but I do work with, it's a company that's been around for ages, but they've rebranded to be Squadron Strategy, run by a guy called Asif, who you know very well, Asif Said, and he is excellent at teaching things like that. I do teach on some of his courses as well, and he's very difficult to get hold of. So if you Google him, you're going to be found it very difficult. So most people actually,
it's fascinating. It's very much word of mouth referral. That
it's 100% word of mouth.
He's a very charismatic guy. I met him once, very charismatic. So for those asking, I will put a link on, perhaps Rajv can help me with a link, because like I said, we can't go on this topic forever, but those who want to find how to see the NHS in a different way, I do think that's going to be quite life-changing.
There is one thing I would say, because I've been interviewing a lot, that kind of does help people, is that maths is a big thing, and people moving from your example DF VT training into a first associate job. I mean, one of the things is they're accepting contracts without understanding what that contract means. So when I've been interviewing, I've tried to explain to any potential DFs what they're actually getting themselves in for. So if you accept a 5,000 UDA contract, the simplest thing you can do is take 5,000, divide it by the number of days you're working, divide it by the number of weeks you're going to be working. Don't use 52 because you're going to take 6 weeks holiday, or 4 weeks, and then 2 weeks you might be ill, and divide that out. Basically, work out the number of U days you're doing. And typically, if it's 5,000, you're going to be doing around 21 UDAs a day. And you can imagine in your head what sort of things you'd have to do to see in a 7-hour day to do 21 UDAs. For example, you do 8 checkups, a couple of band 2 treatments, a couple of band 3 treatments, and you're there. So that's it. It just helps you work backwards. So that's just one way of making the system work. You shouldn't just take 5,000 UDAs, and when you get to the end of the year, you get to 3,000, and then blame the system that you didn't meet your contract. You didn't do any work to try.
You have to do the due diligence to actually figure out. So it's something I read that you posted before, and I completely agree with that. So that's a great little tip about how to work within the environment and the system we have. In the interest of time, Rajiv, we're going to move on to the next 5. If that's okay. We're going to have to blitz through these, I'm afraid. Yeah. Number 6. Okay, they are happy to refer out and develop a skill, a niche that allows people to refer to them. So happy to actually feed other people and happy to be fed. So my question from this one is, what is your niche, Rajiv, and how did you develop it? And what advice would you give to young dentists to develop their niche or find their niche?
Okay, well, mine's kind of weird because I like dentistry. So I like doing everything. I actually do. The only thing I don't like really doing is pediatric dentistry. So that I haven't seen children for 10 years, but that's just because I don't like it. But I actually quite like doing everything. But my niche has now largely become orthodontics and bonding and implants and a combination of those two things, which is fantastic for me. And now it's got to the point where I've got a historically larger list that the patients who now are needing 1 or 2 composite restorations, it just doesn't float my boat anymore. And I haven't got the time for it. So I'm now passing private work. I'd love to be able to pass to my associates, but even they're busy. So I'm even giving my private work to my vocational trainees, which is great for them. And they get loads of time to do it. And, they're always really willing to do stuff like that. I'm passing it, obviously, some to my associates as well. But so that's what we mean, is that when they see those cases, they go, right, you can do that. And often I'll say, well, yes, I'd love to, but come and watch me so you can get something from it as well. And then they're able to, and I'm able to give them stuff as well that I don't want to do, but they love doing. And I think as dentistry becomes increasingly complicated, everyone niching down is going to be a good thing, as long as they are able to accept that they have to refer out and become good at something so that people are comfortable referring to them. And again, I think simply that's what happens. Very rarely do you get an experienced dentist that does everything. If you look at any dentist that you respect or follow online, they tend to stick to 2 or 3 treatments.
And also, Rajiv, is becoming comfortable with the fact that you will not be doing dentures anymore, and you will not be doing peds anymore, and you won't be doing endo anymore, but you'll do the other things. And coming to terms with the fact that it doesn't make you any less of a dentist for making a decision that, this portion of dentistry doesn't, rock your boat, as you said, and this portion does, and you're going to, not only upskill and become awesome at that, but then you can also feed others from the other bits that, someone out there loves doing dentures and they'll do it better than you. Send it to that guy.
100%. 100%. I mean, I don't like doing dentures. I think I'm actually pretty decent at them, but I don't like doing them. It just doesn't. That's it. It doesn't interest me.
So how can someone find their niche then, Rajiv? Someone listening to this and they're maybe 1 or 2 years qualified. How do you find your niche?
You know what? That's a very good question, and I actually don't have an answer to that. I think I think you shouldn't try to find it too early. That's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try and find it. Try your hand at being a general practitioner for at least, I would say, 2 years, at least 2 years, really 5. At the end of 5 years, you'll very quickly know, or even at the end of 2 years, you'll very quickly realize that some treatments really interest you. Whether it's and personally, it's you can pick one at leisure and try it for a while. You don't have to commit to it completely. You just say, well, I'm going to try doing free gingival grafts for a year, and I'll get good at it and refer out. So I like doing free gingival grafts. I'm quite good at them. I still refer a lot of them to periodontists because it's just something I can do. I know I can do it, but I've got too much other stuff, and I'm more interested in other stuff. So
it's a good problem to have, Rajiv, and I think everyone should aspire to that. But I think the takeaway point there is try everything and figure out what you do like. But you have to firstly try, and you'll fail a lot of things initially, and you'll succeed, and you'll find out you're really good. But then you'll really learn that you're good at something, but you don't enjoy it, and that's a revelatory moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. I mean, if you enjoy something, you're going to do more and more of it, and you're going to get good at it, even if you start off not being good at it. It's just the way it works. Dentistry, again, is a skill. Any skill can be learned.
Just on that point, if someone's listening, my advice on that, finding your niche, is exactly what you said. Try everything and give everything a shot. There's one point I just had. It's just gone now. That was really, really hard hitting and impactful. If I think of it, I'll come back to it later. But anyway, we've got to move on to the list anyway. We've got to move on to the list. Number 7, Rajiv. They don't ask for something for nothing. Instead, they build value before investing and asking for investment. So I think that's already, we sort of touched on that when we said about the premolar that's broken, take an x-ray. Yes, it's broken, it's £1,000. It was that scenario again. Is there any other take that you'll put on that? Or is it sort of like what we discussed before, naturally in conversation?
I mean, doesn't apply for associates or principals specifically. I think this is dentists generally. So from a principal point of view, you don't ask from your associates for something for nothing, right? If you're asking them to make a change, there should be a benefit, and there should be a benefit for everyone. So whenever we try and do a change, I always look at 4 things. So there should be a benefit for the practice, there should be a benefit for the associate, there should be a benefit for the staff, and a benefit for patients, of course. So all of those things have to be met before we do anything. So whenever I'm asking for something, there is a benefit for that. I'm not just doing it willy-nilly. I'm not just asking for one person's benefit. And I think the same goes from an associate's point of view when they're communicating with a principal. A lot of the time and I find that this might sound rude, but I find that too many associates just ask for stuff for the sake of asking for stuff. So I've had associates that I've had really good relationships with, and they've asked for things, and I've said, okay, I understand why you're asking, but why do you want that? What's the benefit of that for everyone else? Because if you're asking this just to benefit you, that's a very difficult sell. Whereas I'd rather say, look, if you're doing this, it has to. I'd like them to meet the same criteria. It's got to benefit the practice. It's got to benefit the patients. It's got to benefit the staff in some way.
What's the most ridiculous request you've ever had?
Thankfully, I don't think I've had any. Not on the top of my head. I'm sure I'll think of something.
If you do, just shout. Let me know. So go on.
It was from a staff member. They asked for a washing line, even though we got a clothes horse, because the clothes horse was a bit too low. And I was like, no, that's just ridiculous. Because I'd have to drill holes in the wall somewhere and put a washing line somewhere. We don't have the space to do that. I was like, that's quite ridiculous.
I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting you to say some sort of like a milling unit and a scanner 2-in-1 sort of thing, but the humble washing line.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people ask for stuff for no reason. But if someone asks for a milling unit or a scanner, I'd be like, okay, fine. yes, I understand why that might be attractive, but if that's the case, then we'd have to be doing this number of crowns and this things, and I'd be open for it, but the math has to work. So I have to say, I'd say that to them. I'd say, look, yeah, I'm open to it, but the math has to work. You have to. This is what we need to do that. And then I say, are you willing to do that? Will that benefit our patients? And do you think our staff will be okay with that? And if they go, yeah, I think we can do that, then I go, okay, well, let's put a plan to get that. Let's get those numbers up first, and then go for that. So most of those requests aren't ridiculous.
No, of course not. Of course not.
But the washing line was.
Very good, very good. So we got 8, 9, and 10 to go. So number 8 is they look to improve and I love this one. They look to improve in 3 key areas: clinically, financially, and personal growth. Okay, and aren't afraid to ask help to do this. So it's self-explanatory what you said there. Those 3 areas so important. So I just want to know a little bit more about you. How do you draw inspiration for those 3 areas? How do you develop in those 3 areas? So clinically, financially, and personally.
Well, I think all 3 of them are linked. So I'm going to talk about personal first, because for me personally is, interest that's outside of dentistry, but more important than that, managing my own energy. So whether I'm tired or not, and that's one of the things. I think if burnout is a big thing in dentistry nowadays, and the way I see it is, again, I kind of see it in a very robotic way. If I hired an associate, and instead of calling them an associate, I called them a treatment generating machine, right? So if they were a robot doing that, take out all the personal part, and I worked that machine at 100% for a whole year. I left it on. That machine, if it was a machine, would need some maintenance, some repair, you need to switch it off occasionally. You might need to reboot it. And if that machine cost £1 million, you'd want to do that a lot. And essentially, that's the way I see dentists. If you can't work yourself down into the ground because you are a machine to an extent, you're going to need some maintenance. So you're going to need to eat well. You're going to need to exercise. You're going to need a service. So you're going to have to go on holiday. You're going to have to replenish yourself. You're going to have some iOS upgrades, right? So you're going to have to go. You're going to have to go on courses. You're going to have to learn how to improve, because otherwise you'll become an ancient machine. You need to improve yourself. So that's how I see it, which I know, as I said, it's kind of weird, but that's how I see it.
It's great.
I think that's on a personal level, that's what you're going to have to do. Financially, I think financially and clinically are the same thing, because if you have a look at a great dentist you admire and respect, they're not doing great dentistry and not getting rewarded for it. I think it's okay, and this is our philosophy, that if you do good quality dentistry and you can have good quality conversations with your patients and they understand it and value it, it's absolutely okay if they pay you for it. What's not okay is if you do crap dentistry and fleece the patient. And this is probably more important. It's not okay for you to develop as a dentist, not be able to communicate with that patient, spend a lot of money on your own investment, and then they don't take the treatment and you don't get rewarded for it. I think people miss that one out. So that's not okay for us either.
I love that. That's my opening snippet of the podcast right there. That was it. That was the take. That was awesome. I love that.
Yeah. That's our philosophy. It's only okay if it works for everyone.
Brilliant.
That's how I work.
Awesome. So we covered that as well. So 2 more to go, and I'm honestly, these have been awesome. If you didn't listen to the earlier part, Rajiv wrote these at a ridiculous o'clock in the morning. Insomnia. I don't know what was it.
No, my daughter was awake. Yeah, she was. She was having a bad night, so I was as well. But I thought, well, let's do something with this, because I started thinking about my hiring.
Yeah, well, it's a very inspired list. I love it. So number 9 is that the most successful and most valued dentists are not adversaries. They want to associate and collaborate. And what I found is that the most successful dentists that I message, they're always, always, always willing to help me. Always.
Yeah.
And they're always willing to share and help others and lift everyone up. Can you expand on that a little bit?
100%. I mean, the best dentists don't shoot people down on Facebook. It just doesn't happen, right? The best dentists want to work with other dentists, and they do the best courses. So they will go and learn from somebody else quite effectively. I mean, a lot of dentists are scared of communicating with other dentists because they feel they're going to be shot down. I think that's wrong. I love it when someone contacts me and asks for help, because I think if we can work as a profession and talk to each other properly, we'd get a lot further than we are. We'd have a lot more impact politically and for other reasons as well. For everything, we would just be better. But yeah, the best dentists don't try and shoot other people down. They work with them to improve themselves. I think that's quite self-explanatory.
Well, you are a validation of this. I remember one time I was doing one of my first Invisalign cases some years ago now, and I was having to do this molar IPR, and I quickly messaged you saying, Rajiv, which burr do I use? Because I knew you did a lot of Invisalign, right? And literally within 2 minutes, man, not only did you send me the burr, you sent me like a really like HD zoomed in version. Then you showed me how to orientate on a plastic model of the teeth, okay? And then you gave me some tips about how to re-engineer my ClinChecks in the future to avoid that where possible. So honestly, you are a validation of that, and this is why I respect you so much, as you know. So thank you for helping me in my journey, Rajiv.
I completely forgot about that, but yeah, I remember doing that as well.
I will never forget anyone who's helped me so much, and public thank you for that. And last one is how to take adequate time off. That they take adequate time off and be fully recharged and energized. And you've touched on that already, but I just want to know, how much time do you recommend someone takes off? Or does this depend on the dentist, individual dentist? But also, one more thing to put a little twist in it is the whole 10,000 hour rule. Do you think that in your first 5 years post-qualification that perhaps you should be working 5 or 6 days a week to rack up your experience and then maybe wind down in the future? That's another way to think about it. What do you think about those two things?
Possibly. What people forget about the 10,000 rule is it's not 10,000 hours of random work. It's focused. Clearly, I've forgotten the word he uses, but it's
purposeful.
Specific.
It's purposeful.
Purposeful. That's probably the right word. It's purposeful work. 10,000 rule does not apply if you're burnt out working like a zombie. That just doesn't work. So that's the first thing. In terms of holiday, obviously you have to meet your contract. You can't take 6 months off. So there's got to be a balance. But when you do take holiday, it has to be effective and it has to be taken effectively. The worst thing that happens is that somebody doesn't book holiday. They come back from holiday, they're quite refreshed. And 4 months down the line, they go, you know what, I need a holiday. And obviously, if you're booking a holiday 4 months down the line, you're already knackered. And you won't be able to get away for another month and a half. So what happens in that month and a half is that you're working on empty. I think more importantly, what's better to do is say, well, again, take a step back and go, if I take a holiday here in 4 months' time, I know I'm going to be a bit tired. Let's book some time off. Even if I don't book the holiday yet, that means when I'm getting close to it, I can re-energize myself and I can book something close to the time. But at least I know I've got that bit of time off. What tends to happen is you work. A lot of dentists work for far too long at a lower energy and completely knackered, and then they get to the end, they realize they're knackered, or even worse, they don't even realize that somebody has to tell them to take some holiday off, which I've had to do. Actually, I have to tell some of my associates to take holiday, and then they it takes them a while to get that holiday. So I think actually ordering your holiday is more important than actually how much holiday you take. I think 4 weeks is probably the minimum. So I always tell everyone they should take their proper allocation. If you can, take more, but don't take the piss.
Don't take the piss, everyone. That's the take-home point. But no, it's really good. And what we've addressed there, hit on the head, is that ad hoc culture of taking holidays when you're tired, but your way of suggesting that, be more proactive in your holiday taking, look at the entire 12 months and predict when you're going to have these periods where you're going to be re-energized. How the hell do you go skiing all the time? I mean, I'm knackered when I go skiing and I come back, and you're like going and skiing and you're talking about re-energized. I don't buy it.
Well, you know what? For me, whenever I take lessons skiing, my instructor always goes, "You're such a lazy skier." So I don't ski to go like crazy. I ski to relax. So that's me. Okay. I'm actually quite a lazy skier. So that's the first
it makes sense now. It makes sense now.
Yeah, but as I said, it's more about, it's not even the physicality of it. It's just switching off. That you just have to switch it off, like the machine. You have to turn it off occasionally, let it cool down, lubricate everything else, and then you're good to go after a week. So it's just mentally switching off for me. For me, I don't think the physicality is that important. For me, it's the mental part of it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, Rajv, it's been great to blitz these 10 points, your very original points that you've written. So thank you for sharing that with the community. And it's great to get an insight over this podcast. And honestly, thank you so much.
No, it's been brilliant. Thank you.
And thank you so much, guys, for listening all the way to the end. I'm really sorry if the audio was not clear at any point. It's sometimes the teething issues of different guests, different setups, different headphones stuff. So I really apologize if the audio was unclear at any point. But thanks so much for listening all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. And I've got a whole host of different exciting guests and lots of exciting episodes. Thanks so much for those of you who keep sending in your questions and suggestions. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much. And do check out splintcourse.com if you want to pre-register for a Splint course. Thanks so much.